We're seeing some subtle signs under the surface that this was a very good week for Democrats.
The polls are shifting. The map is changing. The fight for Congress is on. This is the battlefield.
Matt, there's so much to get into, and I suspect that of the things you're looking at, we're going to end up talking about the state of Maine and Graham Platner up to bat first.
That is by far the biggest political story that has happened this week. He had no other option to get out. He was dead man walking. And honestly, I think this is a good thing for Democrats because Platner was the easier opponent for Collins. And now Senate Democrats are going to jump back and launch a lot more money to help the new Senate nominee. The candidate swap that is going to happen in Maine could get you a better candidate. What I'm looking at is, are they going to put their thumb on the scale? Who are they going to pick? Is it a progressive? Is it a mainstream Democrat?
If people want to hash out what that might look like, I wrote about it on my Substack, worthknowing.substack.com. Matt, take us inside the truth serum version of campaign headquarters for Republicans, for Susan Collins. How do Republicans right now really feel about this replacement?
This scares Republicans right now. Platner was the easier candidate. He was easier to beat. We knew there was another shoe to drop. He's our dream candidate to run against because you can paint him in a lot of different ways. Now, if Democrats go through this convention and pick a more centrist, not some crazy wackadoodle socialist candidate, this race gets a lot harder for Susan Collins. Now, look, the Collins super PAC is sitting on $8 million, and they're just going to blow him or her up. The question is how much we can define them, how much we can tie them to Platner, how much we can tie them to socialists, and try to make it stick before they get out of the starting gate. But the reality of the situation is this makes Maine a hell of a lot more competitive for Democrats, and it puts control of the Senate much more at risk for Republicans.
What's your second story?
The Department of Justice is sending election monitors to Michigan's August primary. As operatives, we use primaries as testing grounds, as dry runs. And so what I suspect here is that lawyers are going to test some legal strategies, and by sending them in and doing it under the guise that there is election fraud happening, we're going to see this as just a small microcosm of likely what Trump's going to try in November.
So this is less about actually uncovering anything. This is more like in the movie Signs. This is the military technique. It's called probing. It's a dry run for what you're going to pull off at much greater scale in November.
You're trying to see where your weaknesses are. You're trying to see where the other side weaknesses are so that you are ready in November.
All right, give us your third most watched.
There's a report out there that ACA premiums are likely for another double-digit rise next year. Insurers are projecting a rate hike of about 14%, driving up healthcare costs, inflation, and the loss of enhanced tax subsidies. This is after the 20% increase this year. Now, why this matters is affordability is obviously going to be the biggest issue, and these numbers are going to gain a lot more attention coming in October, right before people start casting their votes. The largest AC enrollment states, Florida, Texas, Georgia, and North Carolina. We've talked about Texas, Georgia, and North Carolina. We've talked about as races Democrats can and will win. And so this becomes a real game changer. If there's a big portion of people who are going to watch their prices go up right before the election, it probably helps Democrats along the way.
On top of the 2.6 million Americans, largely concentrated in swing states and Trump voting states, some of them in swing congressional districts, on top of all of those people not re-enrolling because their costs have gone up, now you've got this time bomb ticking in the background of further price spikes, and it feeds into this overall narrative of economic pain, problems with affording the basics of life, healthcare, food, rent, transportation, and that is reflecting itself in all of the top line numbers that we see in the election.
It's what Marjorie Taylor Greene has been warning against, and it's affordability is going to create a real problem, and they have an opportunity. But my question to you is, you're running this midterm HQ on Substack. How does all this stack up on the dashboard?
So this week on the dashboard, you see structural indicators that are largely unmoved. A little bit of drift in Democrats' direction in the generic ballot, no movement in consumer sentiment, a slight uptick for Trump in his net approval rating. Although, if you read my Substack article about this, you'll see that's largely noise. It's largely a statistical phantom. The one to focus on here is his net approval continuing to slide down among independents. And that's significant because you've seen a substantial slide since January. He's down 15 points. Since the start of his term, Trump is down 30 points in net approval among independents. And I get much more into this in my Substack article, but that speaks not only to his failure to persuade swing voters of his position, but also to mobilize base Republicans. Many of these independents are Republican leaning, about half of them are, and they would normally be part of the group that you and your side would be trying to get to show up. So if you're seeing this kind of steady slide downward in this group, it doesn't augur well for your prospects of getting the turnout you need in the midterms. And that's, of course, what Republicans are banking on. When we look at the chamber status, the ratings updates, it's all flat. There's a little bit of an uptick in Polymarket in terms of win prospects for Democrats in the Senate. That's significant because that's really the main story for me this week. Even though race ratings haven't moved, why are Democrats' chances moving up in the Senate? It's not all the prospect of replacing Graham Platner on the slate in Maine. It's actually because I believe the race map has expanded this week. And that brings me to my bottom line here, which is that you have seen more races come on the board for Democrats that are real prospects for winning. It's not that those individual races have gotten so much stronger for them. Most of them are tied. Most of the ones that they're looking at in order to flip the chamber are basically statistically tied or are a slight lean one or the other. It's that you have so many more prospects now where there's a legit chance for a flip. And that just increases Democrats' chances dramatically.
The clock is on your side. And it feels like every week that Democrats are performing better than Republicans and that map feels more and more favorable to them, that it's a problem for us as Republicans. Are you seeing it the same way? You've looked at everything, so everybody else doesn't have to. What's your take?
There are two things moving at the same time. There's that slide among independents that I spoke to a moment ago. And so that's just a structural indicator that for Trump and the Republicans, their ability to change the narrative, those opportunities are going in the wrong direction and are becoming fewer and further between. At the same time, you're seeing positive expansion in opportunities for Democrats. This is what showed up in just the last week, is in the Real Clear Politics polling average in Iowa and Texas. You're seeing statistical ties. The top one is Iowa. The bottom one is Texas. These are very credible polls. Fox News, New York Times, Siena, University of Texas. Now you're talking about not two races that Democrats thought they could win and two additional races that were a stretch, Ohio and Alaska, to try to thread the needle to get to the 4 wins that Democrats needed to flip the Senate. Now you're talking about 6 races, 6 legitimate Senate races that are on the board, and they're somewhere around that tied territory. That is just a very different picture for the Democratic Party.
And it's creating headaches for us as Republicans because now we're trying to defend more races and we're trying to figure out where to spend and where we can hold.
The bottom line is bigger map, more opportunities, better for Democrats, combined with these subtle downward slides that we're seeing in other indicators. Elliot Morris estimated, based on his polling and modeling, that if Democrats can replace Platner with a strong nominee, that would increase their chances of winning the Senate by 11%. The other sneaky one, just to point out from the past week, is Mallory McMorrow dropping out of the Senate primary in Michigan. So now it's Abdul Al-Sayed, the more progressive candidate, straight up one-on-one versus Haley Stevens being the more moderate. They're in a statistical tie, and some prediction market estimates that Democrats' chances of winning the general election in Michigan have begun to creep up a little bit. So that's another one to watch for.